It is nearly midnight and Halloween night of 2025, and to celebrate this, I'm going to go through almost the entire Halloween franchise, starting with the first movie, 1978. Halloween 1978. Michael Myers, not the Canadian responsible for Austin Powers, is a psychotic murderer. He escapes from the asylum and, pursued by his doctor, played by Donald Pleasence from You Only Live Twice, he returns to the town where he murdered his own sister. There, Jamie Lee Curtis and her teenage friends are his next targets. Someone once told this reviewer, "It is a terrible film. It is so slow you're waiting around for ages waiting for something to happen." Now, the more enlightened moviegoer will recognize this as suspense. John Carpenter originally intended this movie as a low-budget exploitation pick for drive-through movie theaters. Instead, it is a true horror classic, with the dubious distinction of spawning the entire slasher genre of low-budget exploitation picks for the straight-to-video market. Irony indeed. Halloween 2 from 1980. This film starts with the climax of the first movie. John Carpenter wrote the original film to be open-ended as a last thrill. He could be anywhere. Shock. Somehow, somebody, possibly producer Dino De Laurentiis, convinced him to write this far inferior sequel. Donald Pleasence carries on the manhunt while Jamie Lee Curtis is taken off to hospital. This time Michael Myers does not concentrate on the morality of the first movie and does not restrict his victims to teenagers having sex. No, he is now an equal opportunities mass murderer. He heads to the hospital and on his way to Jamie Lee's room he whacks everyone in the building. This is the perfect example of a film where the cast decide, let's split up and explore the creepy basement even though the power is out and there is a serial killer on the loose. Mike Myers scrawls the word Samhain, written Samhain, pronounced Sawan, on a blackboard. Pleasence talks about the druidic human sacrifices that marked what is now Halloween, a direct lead into the third film. The ending is straight out of a Terminator film. Nobody ever thought there would be a fourth film, or a fifth, sixth, whatever the hell. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. No, not another Michael Myers murder spree. He was killed in the second one, remember? Of course, he was back again in the fourth film, but that's Hollywood. The hero investigates the murder of a paranoid maniac. Well, he was murdered, so he wasn't exactly paranoid. Who claimed there was a conspiracy concerning Halloween masks. He and the token babe go to the factory where the masks are made in the small California town of Santa Mira. The mask company is called Silver Shamrock, which is typical bullshit from so-called Irish Americans. The guy in charge is Cochran, played by Dan O'Herlihy from RoboCop, who owns the factory and in effect the whole town. This film is thus something of a western. The film requires serious suspension of disbelief. Not the supernatural elements of the plot. We are well used to such things. No, the unbelievable bit is the idea that the hero, an ugly, hairy 40-something, could get off with a token babe who is 20-something and gorgeous. Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Mad Mike Myers is transferred to a new high-tech, high-security loony bin, and while en route he kills the doctors and crashes the ambulance. Dr. Loomis, played by Donald Pleasence again, is the only one who realizes the danger. The villain's target is his 7-year-old niece Jamie, daughter of the Jamie Lee Curtis character. Jamie Lee Curtis is apparently dead, which begs the question, how did she come back for Halloween H2O? The supporting cast includes Kathleen Kinmont from Renegade as the sexy blonde, and Bo Starr from Due South as the sheriff. And lots of people get bumped off one at a time. Let's see, Halloween 5, Revenge of Michael Myers. It is Halloween again, and Michael Myers stalks the streets of Haddonfield once more. He bumps off the usual teenagers, but he is really after a couple of kids, a boy named Billy and his own niece, Danielle Harris. The sheriff, Bo Starr from Due South, has his own SWAT team. Yes, he's been preparing for this night, but Dr. Loomis, Don Pleasance from You Only Live Twice, lets his obsession with Michael take over. Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers from 1995. Michael Myers is on the rampage again, even though in this series he has endured total bodily destruction at least twice. However, this movie stands far above the Friday the 13th series in terms of direction and scripting. There is an actual sense of terror that far exceeds anything that the jokey Jason Voorhees flicks could create. The film takes up a few years after the previous movie. Myers was abducted by the Cult of Thorn, a group of Satanists who are responsible for his demonic possession by the murderous spirit of Samhain, or whatever. They also abducted Jamie, who's now played by a different actress. Tommy Doyle, played by Paul Rudd from Ant-Man, is back, now a full-grown man. He makes a decent hero in a franchise best known for female protagonists. Myers' shrink, Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance once again, is still on his tail. This is the last film Pleasance made and dedicated to his memory. Unfortunately, Pleasance died before the ending was reshot, which means it is a bit jumbled at the end. We then go to Halloween H2O 20 years later. This is the final episode in the series so far. Dr. Loomis, Donald Pleasance, has been killed off, but somehow Jamie Lee Curtis was lured back for the 20-year anniversary. John Carpenter's credited as co-creator for the characters that this film is based on. This time he is neither writer nor director, which is a pity. The director's reins go to Steve Miner, who worked on Friday the 13th. The truth is, this film is as disappointing as Carpenter's recent efforts, specifically Ghosts of Mars. The film starts with a nice twist in the typical slasher fest. Myers goes after the nurse who assisted Dr. Loomis. Turns out that Jamie Lee Curtis faked her own death, but now Michael knows where she is. And as he closes in on her, we count down to Halloween. Ms. Curtis is now headmistress at a remote boarding school. She has a son, played by Josh Hartnett from Pearl Harbor, and a boyfriend, played by Adam Arkin from Chicago Hope. But she still suffers from nightmares, which are made from clips of the original film. Curtis is a predictably overprotective mother, and her son ends up spending Halloween in the school with his best friend and a couple of babes, Michelle Williams and Jodie Lynn O'Keefe. The security guard, LL Cool J from Deep Blue Sea, is also on duty when Michael Myers comes calling. This is pretty much a cliched, disappointing slasher flick. There are references to Plan 9 from Outer Space, Scream 2, and Frankenstein, but these merely indicate how good the film wishes it was. Janet Leigh herself makes a cameo, but her dialogue is too predictable. She doesn't want to seem too maternal, which is the joke because she's Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, and notes that everyone has had a few scares because she was in Psycho back in 1960. In many ways, that sums this film up. A wasted opportunity, a film that aims at greatness but falls short. Let's see. And after H2O, there was Halloween Resurrection. Michael Myers is back again. He starts by stalking Jamie Lee Curtis through a mental institution. Busta Rhymes and Tyra Banks stage a Dangertainment webcast inside Myers' old house. A handful of annoying college students, including Katie Sackhoff doing a Cordelia impersonation, are locked inside the house at night. Their game is to uncover Myers' motivation. Of course, he's stalking them and picks them off one at a time. All in all, this is a predictable slasher piece with little to put it above the others in the genre. The only original idea, the webcast, was done much better in My Little Eye, which came out around the same time. Then we move forward to Halloween Reboot, 2007. It is 30 years since Halloween was originally made by John Carpenter and 10 years since Halloween H2O 20 years later came out. Rob Zombie, who leaves himself open to being called a hack, attempts to remake the 30-year-old masterpiece. The result? Well, there are more B-movie cameos than in a Tarantino film. The story starts with 10-year-old Michael Myers getting bullied by drunken stepfather Ronnie, played by William Forsythe from Virtuosity, and schoolboy thug Darryl Sabara from Spy Kids. Myers also enjoys torturing small animals, so the school principal Richard Lynch from Galactica 1980 calls in a child psychologist, Dr. Loomis, played by Malcolm McDowell from Tank Girl. Unfortunately, this just sets the little creep on a kill-crazy rampage. Michael ends up in a mental institution staffed by nurse Sybil Danning, janitor Danny Trejo from Spy Kids, and security guard Leslie Easterbrook. Yes, that is right, Callahan from Police Academy, which should give you some idea of the quality of the security that is meant to keep Myers from getting loose. After almost 2 decades of incarceration, Myers has grown from a chubby boy with long girly hair into a 7-foot-tall giant with superhuman strength and long rock star hair. Naturally, he massacres the entire staff and then goes home. Loomis and Sheriff Brad Dourif from Alien Resurrection must save the townsfolk from the kill-crazy maniac. The sex-crazed teenagers include a familiar face from the original series. The sheriff's daughter is Danielle Lloyd, who, despite being about 30 years old when it was made, could pass for 17 years old in the film. The original film's Michael Myers was a genuinely creepy, terrifying character. Unfortunately, as the series developed, he became more like the lumbering thug he inspired, Jason Voorhees. And now Michael has been reinvented as a slasher with too much backstory. He kills without reason. Michael Myers is the core of the film, and since the makers did not get Myers right this time, this film has no chance of working. Now, 2 years later, Rob Zombie made a sequel, Halloween 2, 2009, and I haven't reviewed it because I haven't seen it. I haven't really gone out of my way to look for it, but, well, when I watch it, I'll review it and then I'll add it. We then go forward to Halloween 2018. It is 40 years since Halloween was originally made by John Carpenter, 20 years since Halloween H2O 20 years later came out, and 10 years since Rob Zombie created his own version of the storyline. Now we have a third storyline for the franchise. This version takes up the story where the original left off, ignoring all subsequent films. Michael only has 5 victims at the start: his sister, the driver, and the 3 teenagers. He is looked after by the protege of the now dead Dr. Loomis, although the new shrink is obsessive in his own way. The exposition at the start is delivered by a couple of journalists. They are podcasters, a reference to online media that seems reminiscent of the internet streaming concept that was central to Halloween Resurrection in 2002. Many other bits are taken from the sequels. Unfortunately, the best improvement from the Rob Zombie version, the action-packed escape scene, is forgotten, and we are left with the same off-screen anticlimax as in the original film. In this timeline, Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, did not become a school principal with a devoted son. Instead, she became a reclusive survivalist with an estranged daughter, played by Judy Greer, who in turn became mother to a teenage girl, played by Andy Matichak. Yes, this movie is 3 generations of final girls. This version of Michael Myers is not personally obsessed with Laurie as he was in H2O. He goes on a kill-crazy rampage, like in the middle sections of the original series. It is Laurie that is hunting him. The local cop, Will Patton, from Punisher 2005, also has a grudge against Michael. The final act of the story takes place in Laurie's new home, a remote cabin in the woods that she has fortified. Unfortunately, the security system has not been updated since 1978. The CCTV is monochrome and uses cathode ray TV sets, while she relies on floodlighting instead of night vision. Worst of all, There's no central control for the system, so she has to manually secure every single internal door. This works wonderfully for a suspenseful suck and slash sequence, but it strains the reviewer's suspension of disbelief. Three years later, there was a sequel, Halloween Kills 2001. The main part of the pre-credits sequence is an extended flashback to 1978. It offers version of events different from those of Halloween 2, but with a spectacular cameo by Dr. Loomis, aka Donald Pleasant from You Only Live Twice. The main story starts in the year 2018, directly after the events of Halloween 2018. Did Michael Myers survive total bodily destruction? Well, he did in the first timeline. Since it is the night of the anniversary of the original massacre, Tommy Doyle, played by Anthony Michael Hall from the Dead Zone TV show, holds court at the local bar as the unofficial king of the survivors. When he learns that Michael Myers is on the loose again, Tommy whips up a fury among the bar patrons. On the one hand, it is nice to see a diverse cross-section of people living in the suburbs of Haddonfield. Instead of all cishet Caucasians, we see some black people and a charming gay couple. However, as Michael can take out a team of firefighters with no bother, it turns out that the diverse civilians are just a more widely representative selection of victims. Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, spends most of the movie in a hospital with the local cop, Will Patton, from Punisher '05. The teenage granddaughter, Andi Matichak, joins Tommy's lynch mob. Meanwhile, Laurie's formerly estranged daughter, Judy Greer, is the genre-blind person who wants to leave it all to the cops. It falls to Laurie to remind her that the system has failed. The film builds to a satisfactory climax. However, because this soft reboot series was intended as a trilogy, there is enough story left over for Halloween Ends. The production credits show a few familiar names. The son of Mustafa Akkad is a given, since the Akkad family have been producers of this franchise since 1978. Likewise, Jason Blum is expected, since he is the biggest horror genre producer of the 21st century. The real surprise is Danny McBride from Land of the Lost and his longtime collaborator David Gordon Green. Yes, the comedy creators behind Your Highness are now responsible for a very impressive addition to a long-standing horror franchise. Who would have thought it possible? Finally, Halloween Ends, 2023. This is the third movie in the David Gordon Green trilogy. Set a few years after the first two films, Michael Myers has disappeared, but Haddonfield still feels his presence. A new protagonist is introduced. Corey, Rowan Campbell, is a teenager who gets hired to babysit an annoying kid at Halloween. Of course, it is the night associated by spree killers and practical jokes. Things take a turn for the worse and someone is killed. Corey is unjustly blamed for what happened, and Haddonfield scapegoats him. The town's other scapegoat is Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis. Everyone accuses her of provoking Michael Myers, and they hold her responsible for his murder sprees. Laurie's granddaughter, Andi Matichak, starts a relationship with Corey since they have a lot in common. However, Corey's mental health is not in the best shape. The Michael Myers mythology has been changed a few times, even within this trilogy. This movie embraces the idea of Michael being possessed by the Shape, a supernatural force of evil and chaos. However, it seems to be transmissible. Is Michael's motivation to spread his diseased spirit? Does he want an apprentice? Perhaps the closest thing to this movie is the Scream franchise, with its infinite number of copycats. Thank you for your time. Please feel free to leave a comment and don't forget to like, follow and subscribe. Thank you very much.